Ex-NASA scientist confesses they hit a Dyson Swarm. Official data first, then the confession. Start with what's public, logged, and boring on purpose. Kepler's calibrated pixels and TESS's sector stacks show a class of dips that refuse planet math. Fast ingress, flat floors, and terraced egress, repeated across targets and clustered in burst windows. Centroids hold steady. Co-trending vectors don't erase the shape. Multiband checks stay mostly flat through deep cuts. Independent pipelines rebuild the same morphology straight from pixel stamps. That's the record before anyone talks. Here's the flash list from official lanes. Kepler-like curves tied to mass dataset IDs with fits headers that stamp pipeline stages. TESS sectors that echo aperiodic, abrupt onsets in the same calendar neighborhoods. Pixel-level reconstructions that preserve edges when the detrend excludes the dip windows. Ground campaigns that land synchronized stair steps with GPS time. It's all there, provenance first. Now the part that turns context into conflict. An ex-NASA photometry QA contractor steps forward and confesses, on paper and under Polygraph, that a new visibility management branch sanded those edges in public products. He didn't lead this story, the data did. His sworn affidavit lists the specific dataset IDs and patch tags before and after admin windows. A licensed polygraph examiner found no deception on narrow claims about routing datasets, seeing an Autohide spec, and watching checksum rotations under the same IDs. Those aren't a hook, they're verification that the official trail has a fork, and they anchor a controversial insider source willing to put his name and breath on the line. The villain isn't a person, it's a process. Gatekeepers with NDAs, review boards that turn science into policy, and a language drift that reclassifies non-stellar photometric structures into housekeeping. He names the window when the public mirror changed. Logs show admin access minutes before the updates. Stars temporarily vanished, then returned smoothed, as if the sky had been tidied. One promise: we'll bridge the exact admin window when the edges disappeared, and the moment the team was warned off, after we finished the official audit. Kepler/TESS first. Then the confession, an ex-NASA scientist's insider account explaining why the public mirror didn't match the pixels. Official context first, then the ex-NASA confession. Kepler was built to count planets by watching stars dim on a clock. Planets draw symmetric hues. Engineering artifacts vanish under co-trending and season maps. That's the baseline. Against it, a subset of targets showed fast ingress cliffs, flat floors, and stepwise exits that survived instrument tests, season rotations, and pixel-level extractions. TESS later echoed the same unruly cadence, coarser, but still abrupt. Before we meet the witness, lock the official angle. Co-trending basis vectors couldn't erase the shape. Seasonal parity checks kept the morphology across roll angles. Centroids held within noise. Pixel stamp reconstructions, run outside the agency's smoothing windows, rebuilt the same terraces. Independent ground captures synced by GPS time showed matching steps during burst windows. That's the credibility stack, real datasets, real headers, real process, standing on its own. Only after that context matters does the human piece enter. They hired him to catch broken pixels, not civilization-scale architecture. Ex-NASA contractor, photometry QA, muscle memory built on staring at pixel stamps until stars felt like machines. Kepler's promise was simple. Planets tapped the brakes on starlight with metronomic grace. The wrong signals didn't tap. They slammed. It started as a cluster of dips that didn't repeat. No neat period, no tidy transit shape. He tagged the first one because the ingress was too fast, the floor too flat, and the climb back up looked like steps. Exactly the morphology that the official pipelines and TESS echoes couldn't explain away. He had a habit of grabbing pixel stamps before filing any ticket. Little cutouts around the star to see if flux wobbled in the neighborhood. The centroid didn't budge. Neighbors were quiet. The window matched nothing in the daily thermal drift report. This is where the confession framing sharpens. An ex-NASA insider documenting, in real time, a pattern the official tools couldn't wash out. He submitted it anyway. Within minutes the light curve hopped cues. The ticket reappeared inside an engineering bucket he'd never seen, stamped with boilerplate. Thermal drift under evaluation. He shrugged. Sometimes the pipeline chewed first and asked questions later. Then he saw the cadence again. Different target, similar morphology. Fast ingress, terraced egress, variable depths. A bursty timing window followed by silence. The same shape documented in the official context above. That repetition is the hinge of a confession. He wasn't speculating, he was logging how a real process treated real datasets. He checked backtraces, the same hidden cue, same boilerplate, the label non-astronomical ticked on, and custody shifted out of the science channel. That wasn't normal. He asked a colleague. The reply skimmed across the surface. New stability KPI audits. Translation, don't poke. The NDA came next. He'd signed plenty, but this one carried an unusual clause, continuity of government, and a hint about joint review. He read it twice. Why would a photometry QA tech be bound by language that usually sits near emergency comms plans? He signed anyway. He needed the job, and he figured it was paperwork catching up to security hygiene. This is where the ex-NASA scientist confesses framing fits. Not as spectacle, but as an insider, under NDA, explaining why the public record diverged from the pixels, and choosing to confess the gap with dates, IDs, and hashes. Then the bug became a pattern. He started keeping hashes. Every time he downloaded a light curve, he generated a checksum and saved it with a timestamp. Every time he saw the Terraced morphology, he clipped the pixel stamps and wrote down the masked URL. Within a week, he watched a URL 404, then come back with the same dataset ID and a different checksum. The staircase dips had softened into slopes. The edges were gone. He widened the search. He scraped the public archive for cadence windows he suspected were burst nights, periods when the anomalies clustered. He found more, scattered across targets as if something aligned, then rested. He built a spreadsheet, target IDs, cadence ranges, hash before, hash after. He didn't label it Dyson. He didn't label it anything. He knew the word would poison the well. He tried the straight path. He filed a QA note that didn't look like a theory, just a measurement. Residuals persisting after CBV correction, unrelated to seasonal systematics, centroid stable within noise. The note came back sanitized. Non-reproducible artifact. Engineering save. He checked an internal calendar. A meeting had popped up, no notes allowed, phones bagged at the door, titled Operational Risk Posture. His invite was provisional, then revoked. A friend who went said the tone wasn't curiosity, it was custodial. Science asked what? Policy asked who gets to look. He wasn't a hero. He was a person with rent due and a resume that looked fragile without a glowing reference. But he was meticulous. He built a small personal library of before and after, logged the admin windows when the public mirror hiccuped, and noticed a pattern in the approvals. A single name recurring, paired with a liaison tag that didn't match any open team. Meanwhile, the sky kept misbehaving. He saw the morphology on targets that shouldn't share anything except the pipeline that touched them. Ground reports appeared in forums. Amateurs posting staircase dips on nights that matched his burst windows. Some of them had GPS synced timestamps. Some had weather logs and focus metrics that read clean. He showed a manager the cross-check. The manager didn't look at the plots, he looked at the NDA. "We're going to get you support," he said, and handed him a revised internal process doc that introduced a new phrase, visibility management. He read it 3 times. It didn't ban science. It routed it, and in later sworn statements, the heart of his confession, he would cite this document and its timing by title and date. The emotional stakes crept in sideways. He started sleeping with his laptop on the kitchen table, waking up to refresh masked entries and see if a star still existed. He watched one go gray, temporarily out of scope, right as an independent observer posted a fast ingress, Terraced return from Arizona. Minutes later, Sicily uploaded a similar curve. Queensland chimed in. The public archive coughed, spat a service error, and came back with the star relabeled as a candidate flare. The edges were softer now. The floor was rounded. He wasn't trying to blow anything up. He was trying to keep his hands clean. So he did the one thing that keeps truth from smearing. He externalized time. He mailed himself the hashes, the URLs, the timestamps, so an independent clock would stamp the packets. He backed up to an offsite mirror that did nightly syncs. He tested a containerized pipeline that started from raw stamps and reconstructed the light curve without agency pre-processing. The steps came back, aligning with the official data-first narrative and setting up his later Affidavit/Polygraph as verification of that record. The warning came after. It wasn't loud. It was a soft calendar hold with a subject line that lit up every caution he had. Cross-team stability review. Inside, someone used a phrase that stuck to his ribs. Triggers for Autohide. The spec wasn't poetry. It read like a filter, asymmetry above threshold, cluster density above target, persistence across cadences, fingerprint and hide. His later affidavit quotes those trigger terms verbatim, tightening the confession frame. He stared at the words and thought about what Kepler was built to do. It wasn't built to keep us calm. It was built to watch. To understand why policy walked into the lab, he needed to prove the machine wasn't sick. He needed to show the sky was doing something the model didn't expect. When engineering couldn't explain the steps, policy rewrote the question. And the night the filter went live, he watched the URL blink, the checksum rotate, and the staircase turn into a slope. The pattern that shouldn't exist, why it's a swarm, consolidated. To make sense of the filter, you have to sit inside the shape it tried to erase. Planets draw smooth, symmetric U's. These didn't. The fall was abrupt, flux dropping in a few cadences like a shutter snapping. Then it held a flat floor, as if an object with a hard edge stayed in the way. The climb back wasn't a mirror image. It rose in terraces, step, hold, step, staircases laid onto starlight. That asymmetry alone breaks the planet template. Nature does asymmetry, sure, star spots, flares, dust, but not this clean sequence of edges and plateaus repeating with different depths. Now the timing. These weren't sprinkled evenly. They arrived in bursts, clusters inside windows that then went quiet for stretches. Inside the burst, dips showed up with no fixed period, just stochastic spacing that hinted at many discrete occluders crossing at slightly different angles. Then a rest phase, days, sometimes weeks, before another active window. That work then pause, cadence reads like nodal alignments in a ring of orbits. A shared geometry lining the objects up relative to our sight line, then rotating out of view. Planets don't do that. Starspots rotate with the star. Comets can swarm, but their dust leaves color fingerprints they can't hide. Depth scaled like a box of parts, not a smooth plume. One night you'd see a 1.4% bite, followed by a 0.6%, then a shallow 0.2% tap, each with the same fast ingress, terraced egress signature. That's discrete cross-sections. Think panels, not clouds. And the percent level dimming should come with an infrared tax if dust is responsible. Hot dust glows. Cooler dust reddens the star. The color channels here didn't redden proportionally during the deepest cuts. Multiband checks, where available, stayed mostly flat in chromatic scaling through the core of the dips. That's not what micron-sized grains do. Run the instrument gauntlet. You test what engineers test. Co-trending basis vectors, CBVs, peel off the common mode spacecraft wobbles and thermal drifts. Seasonal maps account for roll angles. You check reaction wheel temperatures and pointing jitter. The steps stayed after those removals. The centroid, the photocenter of the star's light, didn't wander the way it would if a background contaminant was flaring or dimming. Alternative apertures kept the morphology. Neighbor masks didn't change it. If this were pointing noise, the CBVs would chew it up. They didn't. If this were an aperture bleed, changing the aperture would warp the curve. It didn't. Here's where design meets physics. If you were building energy collectors and didn't want to scream in infrared, you'd orient the collector's edge on to our line of sight, presenting thin cords that can eclipse starlight sharply while radiating waste heat away from us. You'd push radiators to cold temperatures and beam their heat at angles we barely sample. That buys you minimal infrared shout in our direction while still intercepting light. It also produces sharp leading edges and layered returns as overlapping panels unstack in time. The terraces are a natural consequence when multiple occluders exit sequentially, each revealing a discrete step. Construction logic leaves fingerprints in time. Orbital periodicity would give you a clock. This didn't. Instead, bursts hinted at deployment phases, batches inserted into similar orbits, then a lull while assembly moved or control algorithms tuned. Think of a heartbeat, compress, release, rest. You can't get a stable period from that, but you can get windows where symmetry in the orbital planes causes crossings to cluster. That's exactly what the burst and rest windows show when you map them across targets within the same sky sector. Dust and comets carry obligations the data wouldn't pay. Dust should scatter blue light more than red and re-emit in infrared. The color slope here is weak at best across deep dips. Comet trains can make a forest of dips, but they smear ingress and give tapered egress as tails drag. They don't do repeated flat floors and terraced exits across multiple stars with no centroid tug. Starspots ride the star's spin and repeat with that period. These windows didn't lock to any stellar rotation, and came and went as if imposed externally. You throw everything at it. Build controls. Pull pixel stamps and track the photocenter at subpixel precision. It sits still. Swap photometric apertures, the steps persist. Remove. Each CBV individually. Residuals keep the asymmetry. Compare seasons to catch roll artifacts. The same morphology appears even when the camera angle changes. That's not an instrument quirk hiding in one corner of the detector. And when the pipeline tried to soften edges, the structure still leaked through. You could recover it by going back to calibrated pixel files and performing your own extraction. Simple aperture photometry, conservative background subtraction, then a light detrending that excludes the dip windows to avoid washing them out. The staircase came back like a watermark. That's the part that feels less like interpretation and more like forensics. Independent routes reconstruct the same shape without agency pre-processing. If this were a single star, you could argue for a weird circumstellar arrangement. But the same template showing up on different targets within a field, sharing active windows that rhyme rather than repeat, points to a shared geometry in our line of sight. The witness didn't declare aliens. He labeled a morphology no natural model cleanly explains, and a consistency no instrument model honestly owns. So why a swarm? Because the shape, timing, and scaling behave like many discrete, human scale, or civilization scale, occluders moving on related orbits, not like one planet or a fog of dust. Because the infrared silence is consistent with cold radiators and edge-on collectors. Because the data past the instrument tests meant to kill it. And because when policy wrote a filter, the parameters mirrored the fingerprint. Asymmetry thresholds, cluster density, persistence across cadences. The exact traits you'd need to hide the steps. Cross-checks that leaked past the wall. The first leak didn't come from a lab. It came from a driveway. An amateur in Arizona posted a light curve with a cliff drop and a terraced climb, then added his seeing profile, GPS time, and a note that nothing in his logs looked dirty. 12 minutes later, a small scope in Sicily uploaded the same staircase. Queensland matched the steps with a few minutes of parallax delay. 3 sites, different hemispheres, same morphology. When one dataset can lie, 3 time-locked curves start to sound like the sky. Ground photometry carried its own audit trail. People put their calibration frames on the thread. Darks, flats, bias. They shared FWHM, sky background, air mass. The nights were boring, which is exactly what you want when you're chasing edges. On those burst windows, the staircase showed up again. Not every night, not every star, but enough to rhyme with the windows the witness had already marked. You could argue coincidence once. You couldn't argue the cadence kept finding the same shape. Meanwhile, TESS watched with a wider net. Its cadence is coarser, its pixels bigger, but it still catches dips if they're big and slow enough to bite through the sampling. In a few sectors overlapping the Kepler field, you could see aperiodic dimming with abrupt onsets that refused to settle into a planet's rhythm. The windows weren't identical, different instrument, different pointing, but the bursts lined up within the week. Lower resolution muted the terraces, yet the fast ingress and irregular spacing poked through. It was the same flavor at a different bitrate. Color tests matter when dust is the villain. On nights when multiband rigs were up, the deep cuts didn't redden the way micron-sized grains should. I stayed too flat through the core of the dips. In some cases, if there was any slope, it was marginal and inconsistent across the terrace steps. That undercuts the cloud story. Dust scatters blue more than red and glows in the infrared. You expect chromatic obligations. They weren't paying their bill. Centroid stability is a quiet judge. If a background variable star or galaxy is interfering, the photocenter of the light shifts as the contaminant brightens or dims. Pixel-level tracking, both in Kepler's stamps and in careful ground stacks, kept the centroid within noise. Alternative apertures, tight, loose, elliptical, didn't change the morphology. Neighbor masks didn't rescue a dust or background hypothesis. If a faint neighbor caused it, the centroid would lean. It didn't. Radio stayed quiet, which some took as disproof. It isn't. There's no reason energy collectors would chat on our channels, and no reason a swarm would beam at us. SETI silence just means nobody's waving. Infrared was ambiguous. Broad surveys didn't find a screaming excess, but a cold, edge-on collector design wouldn't. Waste heat can radiate away from our line of sight, and if the radiators run cold, the signature slides under survey sensitivity. Ambiguity isn't proof, it's room for a design that avoids obvious tells. The most telling cross-check was temporal. External captures and public archive changes lined up a few times in ways that were hard to chalk up to chance. A ground team posted a staircase, the archive hiccuped, the same target. Returned with softened edges labeled as a flare. Flares are sharp on the way up, soft on the way down. These were the opposite. When independent data said edges, the label said flare, and the morphology in the official curve lost its steps. This wasn't a single hero dataset. It was a chorus of small confirmations, ground curves with clean logs, TESS echoes with the same unruly cadence, color checks that refused dust, centroids that stayed put, and timing overlaps between outside captures and inside edits. None of it proved intention. All of it kept pointing away from simple nature and toward discrete occluders. If the pipeline called it housekeeping, the sky kept calling it structure. And structure, across instruments and observers, doesn't care what a slide deck prefers to see. Institutional betrayal, the meeting, the filter, the slide deck. Before this meeting, the record already showed stubborn morphology across Kepler/TESS and independent reconstructions. The posture meeting tried to control that narrative. They called it a posture meeting, the kind you hold when curiosity starts costing you sleep. Phones in bags, badges scanned twice, a printed agenda with no verbs, just nouns that sounded like guardrails. At the door, a sign-in sheet with columns for affiliation and custody role. He didn't have one. His invite was reinstated at the last minute, then downgraded to standby. He waited outside as the room filled with people who didn't usually care about light curves. This is the scene the ex-NASA witness later confessed to, tying a room and a rule set to specific edits in the public mirror. Inside, the tone shifted fast. Not discovery, liability. A presenter opened with a sentence that never left his head. We treat this as an operational risk, not a scientific anomaly. No recording, no minutes, just a slide deck everyone pretended not to read aloud. The first slide reframed the problem. The dips weren't data, they were non-astronomical signatures requiring housekeeping. Reclassification did the heavy lifting. Once you call it housekeeping, the keys move from scientists to custodians. That's where the filter came in. A diagram showed the pipeline's usual stages, then a new branch slipped between calibration and co-trending. A gray box with a quiet label, visibility management. The spec wasn't mystical. It was arithmetic. Asymmetry A above A star, cluster density D above threshold T, persistence across N contiguous cadences. If the fingerprint matched, the signal took a side door and the public product got an engineering save. You could feel the room relax around words that sounded so reasonable. Language drift did the rest. Curiosity words became stability words. Where scientists said flag and study, the deck said suppress and manage. Acronyms multiplied, KPIs for instrument stability, triggers for joint review, escalation paths to partner equities. The more specific the morphology got, the more the text turned abstract, as if furniture names could make the room safer. He scribbled phrases on his palm. Stability KPIs, continuity triggers, cross-domain equities. None of them said edges, steps, or terraces. Then came the slide that made the hair rise on the back of his neck. Title: Non-stellar photometric structures. Flowchart arrows steered candidate signals through tests he already ran by hand. CBV overlap, centroid drift, seasonal parity. He expected a box that said investigate. The box said Autohide if signature persists. A footnote cited foreign origin technology signatures as a partner equity concern. Another footnote noted international sensitivities. The message was simple: visibility is a decision, not a default. A separate appendix laid out the approval chain. Custody shifted to a small liaison team with veto power over releases that might impact confidence. He recognized the recurring approver name from the admin windows he'd logged. The deck didn't hide the process, it renamed it. Non-astronomical became out of scope. Out of scope became engineering save. And if anyone asked later, the audit trail would show a clean path through stability reviews, not a detour around inconvenient morphology. Someone asked about external replication. The answer came as a shrug wrapped in policy. External observations are not authoritative for instrument health. They weren't wrong, but they weren't talking about health. They were talking about control. A bullet pointed to public messaging templates. If challenged, emphasize dust and flares. Remind audiences of instrument limitations. Avoid speculative labels. Dyson wasn't a word on any slide. It didn't have to be. The filter was already tuned to erase its shape. A single page outlined the trigger math, now consistent with the fingerprints we introduced up front. Asymmetry ratio above 1.4 for ingress to egress slope. Plateau variance below a tight sigma to catch flat floors. Stepwise recovery detected via second derivative. Spikes across 3 or more cadences. Cluster density computed over sliding windows to detect burst nights. Any 2 conditions met? Stage for review. Any 3? Autohide and relabel under housekeeping. It was elegant in the way a deadbolt is elegant. And it's the math the witness later confessed to seeing, citing it under oath. Phones came back out in the hallway, and nobody said what they'd just agreed to. He didn't have to guess. Within days, he watched the rules go live. Tickets rerouted before he finished writing them. A new field appeared in the QA interface, stability exception, and its default was set to yes. He ran a light curve through his containerized pipeline and compared it to the public one. The edges in his version were steps. The edges in theirs were slopes. The filter didn't delete, it sanded. The betrayal wasn't loud. It moved in footnotes. Partner equities is a phrase that means someone else's priorities reach into your lab. Foreign origin technology signatures is a phrase that says, without saying, that the wrong kind of discovery becomes someone's jurisdiction. The deck framed it as stewardship. Keep public confidence, avoid false alarms, coordinate narratives. But coordination looks like censorship when the structure you're managing is the truth. He went back to his notes and circled the phrase operational risk. If the sky can produce signals that look like capability, then acknowledging those signals says something about what you can see and what you can't. That's not science's job to calibrate. That's policy's job. And policy had just written itself into the pipeline. Meanwhile, the sky didn't change its mind. The next burst window arrived, terraces intact in the raw stamps. The Autohide caught them in the public mirror and called them flares. He compared the derivative curves. Flares climb fast and cool slow. These dropped fast and rose in steps. The mismatch was the point. If you call stairs a slope long enough, you start believing the building was always smooth. He didn't. He saved the deck titles, the filter spec lines, the footnotes about equities. And he wrote down the only sentence anyone admitted clearly. This isn't curiosity, it's risk. The redactions, when the data went missing. It started quiet, an admin window at 2 in the morning. The public mirror showed a routine banner, maintenance. He refreshed the target page out of habit and watched the checksum rotate. Same dataset ID. New hash. The change note was bland, metadata normalization. The kind of phrase you use when you need a reason that means nothing. He pulled his local copy and ran a diff. The deep edges had been softened. Where the floor had been a table, it was now a pillow. Audit trails tell stories if you read sideways. The masked log showed a chain of edits that didn't match the public cadence. There was an insertion before the mirror updated. An admin account with elevated rights toggling a gray-labeled folder he'd never seen in the interface. Quarantine. The timestamp slid in minutes before the mirror pushed. Roll back to engineering save. The note read, as if the data had done something wrong by telling the truth. He scanned the approval fields. One name repeated, same liaison he'd seen on the slide deck. The cadence of authorizations matched the burst windows he'd already flagged. It was as if the sky rang a bell and the system flinched. A day later, he found an email summary, not addressed to him, but caught in a forwarded chain he wasn't meant to see. It used the new vocabulary with surgical calm. Out of scope for science delivery. Likely non-reproducible. Engineering save applied. No one wrote Autohide. They didn't need to. The euphemisms wore badges now. Then a star vanished. Not forever, just long enough to matter. The target page returned a soft error, unavailable. A placeholder suggested dataset migration, but the mirrors told a different story. The nightly sync he'd arranged showed a clean, older version with the staircase intact. The official copy came back a day later with the flare label pre-attached and a curve that behaved as if somebody had run a smoothing brush across the very cadences he'd circled. The checksum proved it wasn't a hallucination. Before, one sum. After, another. Same ID, different truth. He chased the gray folder. It wasn't public-facing, but the logs referenced it in every change that touched an active window. The pattern repeated. Pull to quarantine, apply stability exception, release with softened morphology. The change notes leaned on 3 phrases: instrument normalization, non-stellar intervention, engineering preservation. None of which described what actually changed, the edges. When he cross-referenced the timings with external captures, They overlapped with uncomfortable precision. Ground observers posted a terrace, the admin window opened, the official curve returned rounded. One night, the mask slipped. A batch job kicked off early, and for 20 minutes the public mirror listed two versions of the same light curve in a hidden index, before and after, both accessible if you knew the path. He clicked both. The first showed the fast ingress, the flat floor, the stepwise escape. The second bent the cliff into a slope and replaced steps with a lazy ramp. The file headers told on themselves. A new processing tag aligned with the filter branch added after the posture meeting. He screen captured the headers, the hashes, and the timestamps, then watched the duplicate vanish as the index refreshed. He asked for a ticket history. The response quoted process. No action outside routine curation. He asked again, this time with hashes attached. The reply was colder. Please refrain from circulating non-standard diffs. Stability posture is under review. In the internal channel, somebody posted a reminder. Public mirrors are authoritative. Alternate pipelines are developmental. He stared at the words and thought about how authority travels faster than accountability. The strangest redaction wasn't a curve, it was a map. A centroid time series he'd saved showed the photocenter steady through a dip. The reissued product swapped in a centroid file with missing rows precisely at the terrace. The note blamed flagged cadences excluded for quality, but the quality flags had never been set on the originals. He laid both files side by side. The holes lined up with the moments a background star, if it existed, would have pulled the centroid. Only the ground stacks had already shown no tug. The gap didn't protect truth, it erased context. He kept tracing the gray folder's shadow. Each time the quarantine flipped, the same approver stamped it, and the same liaison field toggled. It looked like oversight, it felt like custody. In the mirrors he didn't control, the sky behaved. In the mirror he did, the sky told the awkward story. And the more the public record smoothed, the more his offsite archive looked like a diary of things the system wished it hadn't seen. The night of the flare that wasn't. It began with a forum ping that read like nothing. Suspected flare, sudden drop, weird return. He clicked the attachment and saw the cliff, flux falling. In a handful of minutes, flattening into a quiet plate, then climbing back in steps like a staircase. The poster in Arizona wasn't claiming anything big. He listed seeing air mass, FWHM, guiding RMS, and a GPS lock that ticked to the second. No drama, just a curve that looked like the ones he'd been watching get sanded. 12 minutes later, Sicily chimed in. Different scope, different camera, the same morphology within a small offset. Their calibrated frames were clean, darks and flats matched, sky background steady, no wind gusts in the dome log. Then Queensland dropped a third curve with a slight parallax shift and the same stepwise escape. 3 longitudes, 1 sky story. The thread filled with questions about clouds and focus. Everyone posted their logs like receipts. A quiet consensus formed. This wasn't weather. He checked the STARS public page. It loaded, then coughed a service error. When it came back, the label read candidate flare, and the edges had rounded. The ingress was still fast, but the flat floor softened into a shallow bowl, and the staircase on the way out had been shaved into a ramp. The note said quality flags had been applied. He knew those flags. They weren't set in the raw stamps. He opened his offsite mirror. The nightly sync had captured the pre-edit version hours earlier. Fast ingress, flat floor, terraced egress. He overlaid Arizona's curve on top. The steps clicked into place. You could hear the teeth in time. Sicily's data sat a few minutes to the side, Queensland a few more, all of them tracing the same geometry from different angles. The public curve's softened exit couldn't keep up with the alignment. The steps the system erased were still printed in the sky. He ran a quick derivative test, the same second derivative spikes he'd seen in the slide deck's Autohide spec as a trigger for stepwise recovery. In the mirror data and the ground curves, those spikes lit up at each terrace. In the public product, the spikes were gone, replaced by a single hump that belonged to a flare template. Flares shout on the way up and bleed down. This one dropped, held, then climbed like something layered was moving out of the way. Meanwhile, an internal log showed an admin window overlapping the exact minute Arizona posted. A gray folder move, quarantine toggled, stability exception applied. The approver field held the same name. He looked at the trio of driveway curves and the sanitized official version and felt the split screen click. The ground said edges. The archive said flare. The clock on both said someone moved between them. He didn't post the mirror. He knew better. He posted the ground overlays and asked a narrow question. Why would a flare produce stepwise egress aligned across 3 sites? The thread stalled. A moderator suggested unmodeled atmospheric layers and closed comments. He sat back and watched the star's public page hold the flare tag like a bandage. Then he wrote the date and time on a sticky note and stuck it to his monitor. If this night didn't convince him, nothing would. The cadence that policy called noise had echoed around the planet and landed back in his hands. He pulled up his containerized pipeline, cut the raw stamps into a fresh light curve, and reran the smoothing exclusion to trend he trusted. The steps snapped into view, clean as railings. He compared all 4, Arizona, Sicily, Queensland, and his rebuild, then looked back at the flare-labeled slope on the official page. One of these was pretending. He had the admin window times to circle which. The thread went quiet, but his inbox didn't. A stranger with a small university header sent a 1-line email. We saw it too. Attached was AG and our split showing almost no chromatic tilt through the core of the dip, and a note that their centroid stayed put. He saved it in the folder he'd started to call Stairs, closed his laptop, and let the sticky note stare at him from the dark. Credibility front-loaded, Polygraph and Affidavit as verification. The data leads, the human paperwork confirms it. He knew how this looks without guardrails, 1 witness, some hashes, a story about filters. So he did the boring, unglamorous things that make claims carry weight. After the official data case was on the table, he booked a licensed polygraph examiner who'd never heard of Kepler. The intake was clinical, ID check, consent forms, a rundown of relevant and control questions. He kept the scope narrow. Did you personally route datasets into an engineering queue? Did you see or receive a specification for an Autohide filter that used asymmetry, cluster density, and stepwise recovery triggers? Did you observe public masked entries change checksum between downloads while retaining the same dataset ID? Did you alter or fabricate those files? The control questions bracketed nerves, the relevant questions held the spine. This positions him not just as a source, but as a confessing ex-NASA insider willing to bind his claims to. Process and penalty. Electrodes on fingers, chest band for breathing, a cuff for blood pressure. The examiner read each question twice. He answered yes to the routing, yes to seeing the spec, yes to checksum changes, no to altering files. The readout came printed and matter of fact. No deception indicated on the claims about routing, the filter, and the checksum windows. The examiner added a standard caveat in plain English. Polygraphs don't prove truth, they detect physiological patterns. He wanted that caveat in the record. It kept the floor honest. Next, the paper that actually bites, a sworn affidavit. He had counsel draft it. It named the jurisdiction, listed his role and the limits of it, and pinned down the technicals without a single adjective. It listed specific masked dataset IDs and the software patch versions stamped in the FITS headers before and after the admin windows. It described the admin windows by UTC start and end down to the minute, linked them to observed checksum rotations, and attached hash strings for each version. It described in neutral terms the internal labels that appeared, engineering save, stability exception, out of scope, and the presence of a gray-labeled quarantine step recorded in backend logs. He included the condition that he never used the word Dyson in any internal communication, and that his notes described morphology only, fast ingress, flat floor, terraced egress, aperiodic clustering, mirroring the official context already demonstrated. He attached screenshots of the hidden duplicate index that briefly exposed both pre- and post-process products, with header tags showing the new pipeline branch added after the posture meeting. He named the slide deck by title and date, a page count, and the phrases that mattered: visibility management, non-stellar photometric structures, partner equities, foreign origin technology signatures. In other words, a confession anchored to artifacts anyone can audit. A sealed addendum, held by counsel, listed internal role titles, and the recurring approver and liaison names associated with the quarantine toggles. He didn't publish those. He referenced them so a court could ask later if it came to that. He acknowledged the limits he couldn't cross. He didn't have root access, he didn't see the entire pipeline codebase, and he couldn't attest to decisions made above his custody level. He could attest to what he handled and what his logs recorded. He signed under penalty of perjury and filed the affidavit with a notary stamp that carried an unromantic weight. For good measure, he appended independent replication notes, containerized notebooks that, when run on calibrated pixel files pulled before the admin windows, reproduced the staircase morphology without agency pre-processing. He linked to the amateur captures from Arizona, Sicily, and Queensland, and included the University G/are split with centroid notes. He didn't argue conclusions. He documented a chain. He knew a polygraph isn't science. He also knew audiences use it as a proxy for nerve and sincerity. So he framed it accordingly. Not proof, but a signal that he wasn't playing games with words. The affidavit was the part that counted. It didn't need belief. It needed to withstand a boring, adversarial read. Dates, IDs, hashes, headers, process notes. The stuff that doesn't care if you like the story. He sent copies to 2 places that still keep records without asking permission: a public interest law archive and a university library that handles sealed deposits. Each time, he asked for a receipt that included a checksum of the submission and a timestamp. External clocks again. If the narrative drifted, the paperwork didn't. When he closed the folder, he'd done what he could to put himself on a short, solid leash. Narrow questions answered under a machine that watches your breath, and a sworn statement that could ruin him if he lied. He wasn't asking anyone to jump to aliens. He was asking them to start with the edges, the windows, the edits, and the signatures that a filter recognized well enough to hide. The one they couldn't erase, the mirror archive. The lifeline wasn't a whistle or a leak. It was a mirror, dumb, patient, and on a timer. A small university server ran a nightly sync of public science assets, hashing files as they landed and tucking the sums into a text ledger no one bothered to read. It started years before the posture meeting, before visibility management became a box in the pipeline. That mattered. Provenance predated policy, and it independently corroborated the ex-NASA confession without needing his name. He tested it the morning after the flare that wasn't. The mirror held the pre-edit light curve with the stairs intact, time-stamped hours earlier by an external clock. He grabbed the official version, re-downloaded, and watched the checksums disagree. Same dataset ID, different truth. On paper, that shouldn't happen. In practice, the mirror didn't care what should. It only remembered what arrived and when. He pulled older nights. The pattern repeated across targets he'd flagged. Before and after pairs sharing IDs and diverging hashes straddled the admin windows. A quiet control lived in the headers. Before carried a pipeline tag that ended at co-trending. After carried a new branch label, the same one slipped into the slide deck as the visibility module. He stacked the files and diffed the series where the dips lived. The mirror's curve fell like a cliff, held a flat floor, then climbed in steps. The post-branch curve rounded every edge. The rest of the light curve, away from the dips, matched within noise. Only the fingerprint had been sanded. He didn't want anyone to argue your code did it, so he made his code not matter. He set up a containerized notebook with pinned versions of standard packages, photoodles, astropy, numpy, and wrote the light extraction so plainly it felt like math class. Simple aperture photometry on calibrated pixel stamps, fixed background annulus, robust outlier rejection outside the flag dip windows, linear detrend on out-of-event cadences only. No magic. Push button get curve. Run it against the mirror's pre-branch stamps. The terraces came back like they were waiting. Run it against the post-branch stamps. The steps were still there in pixels, weakened in the official light curve, unchanged in raw. The container just made it undeniable. Pre-processing choices, not the sky, were doing the rounding. He added controls because skeptics deserve them. He shrank and grew the aperture, the morphology held. He slid the aperture off-center to test for background tug. The centroid track still sat within noise through the dip. He swapped in neighbor masks, flagged saturated pixels, removed each CBV one by one to see if any particular vector spoofed the steps. Nothing ordinary washed them out. Only the new branches smoothing erased the second derivative spikes that marked each terrace. Then he published the notebook, without commentary, just a readme with 3 lines. Fetch stamps by ID, build light curve, plot derivative. He dropped the mirror hashes next to the fetch commands and told people to supply their own API keys. A small lab in Spain ran it in an afternoon and sent back overlays that matched his within a fraction of a percent. A grad club in Japan copied the container recipe and pushed through a different target from the same burst window. Same fast ingress, same flat floor, same stepwise return. An amateur group used cloud credits to spin the container on a rented GPU box. 5 minutes later, they posted the plot with a caption that read, simply, stairs. Because the mirror's ledger recorded file hashes daily, replication wasn't faith, it was bookkeeping. Anyone could verify that the before existed before the admin window, and that the after carried a new tag and a new sum. Anyone could run the container and get the shape without touching the agency's light curve. Each successful run was a small vote for the same story. The morphology lives in the pixels. The pipeline only decides how much of it you're allowed to see. He expected pushback on calibration. He got attempts. Background levels differ. He showed the annulus stats. They didn't. Pointing jitter. He plotted centroid RMS across the event. It stayed flat. Flat field drift. He swapped in contemporaneous flats. The curve didn't budge. The arguments kept hitting the guardrails the mirror provided. Same stamps, same header tags, same timing. If you wanted the steps gone, you had to choose to push the smoothing through the very window where the signal lived. Independent replication made the conversation boring in the best way. Labs and amateurs clicked run, posted overlays, and compared hash strings like fingerprints. A small observatory folded in their G/are split and showed the color staying put through the deepest terrace. Another group added a centroid time series from stacked ground images and found no photocenter tug. None of that proved intent. It did prove method. Motive was still theory. Method was printed in headers and ledgers. He ended where the mirror started, with provenance. A nightly cron job, a hash, and a timestamp outlasted a policy designed to sand edges. The one they couldn't erase wasn't a dataset. It was the habit of backing up truth before anyone decided how visible it should be. Motive, geopolitics, funding, panic. If you want to know why the edges got sanded, follow the budgets and the flags pinned to the wall. Dyson isn't a science word in that room, it's a funding bomb. The minute the public hears alien megastructure, oversight hearings heat up, missions get dragged into culture war, and every clean KPI about instrument stability turns into a target. Kepler's legacy, TESS's cadence, Webb's time, none of them are built to survive a narrative that says the sky might host technology we can't contextualize. COM wins grants. COM keeps launch. Manifests on schedule. A staircase light curve doesn't look calm. There's a second motive hidden inside national security briefs, dual-use fear. If you admit you can see energy harvesting signatures at interstellar distances, you also admit where your detection seams live. That matters to people who spend their careers drawing maps of what our sensors miss. A Dyson-style deployment implies power, logistics, autonomy, capabilities. The specific cadence we described, bursts, rests, panels overlapping, reads like a construction tempo. If that's real and you say it out loud, you're broadcasting how you'd spot industrial activity anywhere, including places closer to home. Some offices prefer that knowledge to live behind doors. Universities publish, agencies manage. That split creates a third motive, narrative control. Space science is collaborative until a result threatens confidence. Then partner equities starts showing up in footnotes. A foreign space agency, a defense lab with shared infrastructure, a contractor with export controls. Each one can veto how loudly a discovery is framed. Nobody has to say, don't call it a swarm. They just ask for stability. Stability looks like a press line that leans on dust, flares, and instrument cautions, and a pipeline that routes anything spiky to housekeeping. If a paper sneaks through, it gets drowned in more data needed. International signaling sits right behind that. Announcing you've detected technologically structured occlusion around a distant star is a message whether you intend it or not. It tells rivals your anomaly pipelines are sensitive, your mirrors are sloppy or tight, and your risk posture leans open or closed. If your allies disagree on how to handle that signal, temporary classification blooms across the edges. Temporary classifications have a habit of turning into default states. The slide deck called it visibility management. The subtext was don't advertise what we can or can't see. Funding pipelines reward predictability. Proposals live or die on track records. Few false positives, clean yields, smooth operations. A curve with terraces threatens all three. If you accept it as natural, you admit your models missed a class. If you accept it as engineered, you trigger policy you don't control. If you sit on it, you maintain KPI optics and keep the review boards happy. That's the quiet math behind Autohide. It's not a mustache-twirling plot. It's a risk ledger that discounts truth when truth destabilizes the graph. There's also plain panic management. Agencies have fresh scars from UAP headlines and politicized hearings. The fear isn't just tinfoil. It's governance. Once a story crosses from AR-14 to late-night TV, you don't guide it, you chase it. The posture meeting tried to get ahead by redefining the problem as stability. That move wasn't science, it was inoculation. You don't let a morphology that looks like capability roam into a data portal without guardrails if your inbox already carries memos about international sensitivities. Here's the part nobody writes down but everyone feels. Daylight is expensive. Open mirrors force accountability. Hashes lock narratives to reality. Every external replication tightens the rope on internal process. That's why engineering save became a euphemism. It buys time. Time to brief partners, tune messaging, and decide which hill to defend. Meanwhile, the sky doesn't pause. Burst windows open and close whether a liaison signs off or not. So motive isn't mysterious. It's structural. Protect funding by avoiding fireworks. Protect detection seams by muting capability signals. Protect alliances by keeping vocabulary soft. Protect public confidence by smoothing edges. The cost is scientific courage. The invoice comes due when a mirror refuses to forget and a community learns to read hashes better than headlines. What the data actually says. Strip the labels and stack the light. Start with Kepler's calibrated pixels, grab the same targets across different quarters, and map the active windows the mirror preserved. You see rhyme, not repetition. The bursts don't land on a clock, they line up with geometry. When the spacecraft rolls and the camera angle changes, the windows slide a little but keep their clustered character, as if a set of orbital planes rotated into our line of sight, crossed it, and rotated out again. That's not a single planet. That's traffic. Now lay in TESS. Its cadence is slower and its pixels are broad, but in overlapping sectors you still find unruly dips that resist periodicity. The amplitude is muted, the terraces blur, yet the onsets are too abrupt for a noise story, and the clusters fall within the same weeks the Kepler-era bursts would predict if the alignment recurs. The curves don't match one-to-one, they don't need to. They agree on flavor, aperiodic, clustered, asymmetric. Run the usual suspects through obligations they can't dodge. Dust first. If micron grains block percent level light, you expect chromatic tilt in G, R, I, and a measurable infrared excess. Where multiband data exists during deep cuts, color stays nearly flat through the cores. Infrared surveys don't show a hot, screaming disk. Starspots? They repeat with stellar rotation and carry color changes. The burst windows ignore the spin and come and go on their own schedule. Comet trains? They smear ingress and taper egress with tails. The steps survive derivative tests designed to catch terraces. Each natural model reaches for an escape clause and comes back with a bill the data won't pay. Do the parity checks that don't care about anyone's theory. Discan on the time series of second derivative spikes finds clustered step events in active windows and near zero density in quiet periods. Isolation forests trained on symmetric transit templates flag the terraces as anomalies with high isolation scores, while leaving normal transits unbothered. Swap cadence bins to test sensitivity. The asymmetry metrics wobble but never flip sign. The signal holds across methods that weren't built to find aliens. They were built to find edges and clusters. Independence matters more than elegance. Open pipelines reconstruct the morphology from raw stamps without touching agency light curves. Centroid maps stay level through the dips within subpixel noise, so background contaminants don't have a lever. Ground echoes pop during the same predicted windows with clean logs and GPS time. Each path lands on the same odd shape by different roads. If one road is wrong, the others shouldn't arrive at the same door. Why no big infrared shout if something's catching that much light? Because the data doesn't require hot collectors. A swarm that presents thin, edge-on chords toward us and radiates waste heat at cold temperatures off our sightline won't light up all sky surveys. The absence of a loud excess narrows design space. It doesn't erase occlusion. Cadence blind spots help too. If the radiators flicker outside our band passes or beam anisotropically, you get dimming without an obvious heat halo. That's not proof of engineering. It's the space engineering lives in if it wants to hide. The scoreboard looks like this. Dust fails chromatic duty and IR excess expectations. Starspots fail timing and symmetry. Comets fail ingress and egress shape across multiple targets. Instrument noise fails cross-season parity and pixel-level reconstructions. What passes? Discrete occluders with sharp leading edges and layered exits, moving in related orbits that produce clustered crossings when nodes line up. That reads like engineering because it behaves like parts. Map the cadence across missions, and the pattern sharpens. Kepler's high cadence captures the terraces in detail. TESS's coarser eye still sees the fast onsets and clusters in the same calendar neighborhoods. Ground rigs, when coordinated, catch stair steps in near real time and hand you chromatic checks that stay flat. The geometry argument gets teeth when the windows rhyme across instruments, not repeat. Alignment doesn't care what camera is watching. It cares about planes and nodes. Skeptics ask for adversarial tests. Good. Throw phase scrambling at the light curves and rerun the anomaly detectors. The fake curves lose cluster density and second derivative structure. Inject planet-like transits into quiet windows and watch the classifiers treat them as normal. The terrace metrics stay dark. Mask the dip windows before detrending to avoid washing out edges. The steps remain. The model space for innocent explanations shrinks every time a control behaves. None of this proves intent, and we shouldn't pretend it does. It proves morphology and timing that fit discrete, layered occluders better than any natural fog, flare, or spot we've got. It proves the shape lives in pixels before pre-processing survives. Independent pipelines, and reappears on the ground when the sky's alignment cooperates. It proves that when you measure without smoothing the very windows that hold structure, you keep seeing the same stubborn signature. If construction is underway, the clock isn't philosophical. A swarm ramps. Early phases look like what we're seeing. Small coverage, sharp edges, bursts during deployment and tuning. As fill fraction grows, the dimming deepens and cadence windows widen. That means each burst is an opportunity to constrain geometry, infer plane orientations, and test for nodal drift. It also means the longer we treat edges as a stability problem, the more we blind ourselves to a process that, by definition, speeds up. Consequences if a Dyson Swarm is underway. If those terraces are construction, we're looking at civilization-scale power coming online. Continuous power changes everything. Industry unhooks from planets, habitats stop chasing seasons, long missions stop rationing jowls. Planning horizons stretch past politics. Whoever builds this doesn't think in election cycles, they think in centuries. That kind of stability implies governance we can barely simulate. Autonomous systems laying down orbits, error-correcting logistics, a culture comfortable trusting machines with continuity. That scale forces a change in how we watch the sky. Filters that treat sharp edges as instability become blindfolds. You can't learn a cadence if your pipeline rounds off the very features that carry geometry. Fingerprints need to be published, not whispered. If bursts track nodal alignments, we should publish windows ahead of time so ground rigs can swarm back. That requires a different instinct. Show your assumptions, show your triggers, and take the reputational hit when you chase a dud. Security teams will stare at the same plots and reach for different levers. Capability assessment kicks in. A swarm that grows implies mining, manufacturing, and autonomous control at planetary scales. The immediate move will be to classify the fingerprints and protect detection seams. That's understandable and dangerous. Overclassification hides mistakes as easily as it hides breakthroughs. If you turn Autohide into doctrine, you don't just keep adversaries in the dark, you keep yourself there. Norms are the only break. Pre-commit to automatic declassification clocks and publish what counts as a capability signal versus a curiosity signal. Markets will lunge for the headline. You can feel the froth building the moment Megastructure leaks into a prospectus. That's where discipline matters. No trading on unreleased datasets. No press lines without reproducible pipelines attached. If a fund wants a story, the price is replication, containerized notebooks, posted hashes, and independent confirmations before anyone gets to wave a chart. Ethics aren't slogans here, they're protocols. Every observer keeps logs public. Every analysis lists exclusions and detrending windows. Consent runs through it all. Don't scrape private mirrors, don't dox whistleblowers, don't publish names from sealed addenda. Culturally, we'll feel the tug to talk back. Don't. Transmission is an urge, instrumentation is a duty. Before anyone points a dish and writes a message, we need to map the cadence like adults. Plane orientations, fill fractions, phase drift, and whether the bursts sharpen over time. If intent exists, it's in the engineering, not in a microwave beam back from Earth. The first contact here is methodological. Learn how they build, not what they say. There's a quieter consequence inside science itself. Incentives flip. Right now, you get rewarded for smooth catalogs and neat populations. In a world where engineering signatures might exist, the job is to become good at exceptions. Journals need a home for structured anomalies that pass hard controls. Review boards need to stop punishing edges as PR risks. If a morphology survives pixel-level forensics, it deserves daylight even if the conclusion column stays blank. Observability sets the stakes for everything that follows. A swarm under construction will change the light budget of its star over years. That's a testable claim. If we maintain transparent fingerprints, coordinated ground campaigns, and open cadence forecasts, we can watch fill fraction change in real time. If we keep sanding steps, we'll rediscover the same truth 10 years late and pretend it's fresh. The choice isn't hype versus silence. It's daylight versus drift. There's a governance layer nobody wants to own. Who adjudicates engineering save when the sky looks engineered? Who decides when a fingerprint library is complete enough to publish? The answer can't be a single office. Build an oversight panel with photometry experts, instrument veterans, ethicists, and yes, a security liaison, with fixed terms and public minutes. Give them one job: freeze suppression when 2 independent instruments concur, and set a timer on every hold. If the terraces are the early scaffolding of a Dyson-style system, then the only honest posture is modesty and rigor. We don't know the builders. We don't know the purpose beyond power. What we do know is how to measure. So measure cleanly. Publish the fingerprints. Coordinate the windows. Set norms before markets and ministries set them for you. And remember the one rule the mirror taught: hashes beat narratives. The remedy: daylight and discipline. Daylight isn't a press release, it's a workflow. Start with fingerprint libraries. Publish the morphology that triggered Autohide, fast ingress thresholds, terraced detection via second derivative spikes, plateau variance bands, cluster density windows. Don't bury them in prose. Ship JSON schemas and reference notebooks. When a candidate hits 2 fingerprints across independent instruments, suppression freezes by rule. The default flips from hide then justify to show then interrogate. Mirror discipline is next. Mandate external mirrors with immutable logs and daily hashes, university, international, and citizen run. When an engineering save occurs, it must flip a public flag in the file header with a machine-readable reason and a human-readable link to the change note. No silent smoothing. If a dataset ID persists while the checksum changes, the ledger tells on you. That's the point. Set oversight where expertise lives. Build a rotating review panel that includes photometry veterans, detector engineers, statisticians, and one security liaison who doesn't get a veto. Their charter is narrow: adjudicate suppression within a fixed clock, say 14 days, and publish minutes stripped of sensitive names but heavy on methods. If 2 independent instruments concur on a fingerprint, suppression expires automatically unless the panel votes supermajority for a short, renewable hold. Clocks beat euphemisms. Pre-register the analysis. Before burst windows open, teams post their pipelines, exact exclusion windows to trending methods, CBV handling, aperture choices, centroid tolerances. Lock versions in containers with checksums and DOI pins. When the sky fires, the runbooks are already frozen. You're not tuning code to chase an outcome. Reproducibility becomes currency. Papers that ship containers and hashes move to the front of the line. Claims without them wait their turn. Open cadence forecasts. If nodal alignments cluster events, publish predicted windows with uncertainties. Coordinate a ground network that spans longitudes and bands, G, R, I at minimum, and a handful of sites with simultaneous near IR to probe any subtle color slope. Each window gets an ops page, finder charts, target lists, planned apertures, and a shared log template. Observers upload calibration frames and sky logs in real time, not weeks later. The network learns to behave like a single instrument. Make the boring parts visible. Every change to a public product posts a diff summary, which cadence is altered, which filters applied, which flags toggled. Include tiny plots of first and second derivatives across the affected region. If steps vanish, everyone sees where and how. Keep a rolling audit of quarantine touches with de-identified roll tags and timestamps. It's amazing how fast stability posture shrinks when 1,000 eyes read the ledger. Normalize nulls. Not every terrace survives scrutiny. Some will die under better flats, bad weather, or uncooperative centroids. Celebrate those as much as the keepers. A shared retired fingerprints list teaches the field what fool's gold looks like. It also denies cover to people who claim the library is a Rorschach test. The list is a map of mistakes you don't need to make twice. Guardrails for hype and harm. No trading or fundraising tied to unreleased or embargoed anomalies. No naming or shaming individuals, roles and methods only. Whistleblower protections formalized. Safe channels to the panel, legal counsel on call, and a policy that strips identifiers from posted materials. Security has a seat, but not the steering wheel. Their job is to argue for narrow, time-bound holds when capability signals are plausible. Everyone else's job is to argue for daylight. Finally, write the social contract into the headers. Each dataset carries 3 lines that outlast committees. Fingerprints matched, suppression state with timer, and mirrors that hold prior hashes. If a product changes, those lines change with it, and a bot posts the delta to a public feed. The story moves at the speed of facts, not memos. Do this, and curiosity stops being a risk. It becomes an expectation. The mirror taught the lesson. Truth stored well outruns spin. Daylight and discipline are just ways to store it on purpose. Final turn, why they hid it, why it matters now. Lay the pieces edge to edge, and the silhouette stops wobbling. The anomaly wasn't abstract. Official Kepler/TESS context and independent pipelines showed the morphology first. Then an ex-NASA scientist confessed to the filter that sanded it, an insider source taking the controversial step of documenting the gap. The edits left fingerprints, hash rotations, gray folder toggles, relabels that rounded stairs into slopes. External captures aligned within minutes. A containerized pipeline rebuilt the terraces from pixels the agency didn't touch. The motive sat in the footnotes: partner equities, international sensitivities, capability signals. You don't need a villain to read that sentence. You need a risk calculus that prefers quiet. The synthesis lands like a simple line: anomaly, witness, altered records. Each one alone is explainable. Together they rhyme too tightly to dismiss. A staircase light curve tagged as a flare, checksum changes under a stable dataset ID. A meeting where visibility became a metric. Those aren't vibes. They're choices. The disclosure calculus inside that room wasn't never. It was not now. Hold until messaging hardens, until partners agree on posture, until the next budget clears. Why it matters now is timing. The burst windows haven't stopped, they're maturing. Kepler caught fine-grained terraces. TESS echoes the unruly cadence. Ground campaigns have learned to pounce with synchronized G, R, I and centroid stacks that hold steady. Each window we handle cleanly gives us plane angles, nodal drifts, and fill fraction constraints. Each window we sand turns into a paragraph we'll rewrite with regret. In a build that might accelerate, delay isn't neutral, it's blindness. There's another reason it matters. The community already forced daylight without permission. Mirrors with immutable hashes, containers anyone can run, and a habit of posting calibration frames alongside claims. That's the antidote to posture. It's also a warning shot. If the only way to trust the record is to keep private ledgers of public science, then the center stopped holding. We can fix that with published fingerprints and clocks on suppression, or we can keep letting euphemisms write our catalogs. The hard part to accept is ordinary. Nobody needed to say, hide a Dyson Swarm. They wrote stability KPIs, engineering save, and operational risk, then built a branch that sands edges when edges matter. Policy filled the vacuum where courage should have lived. That's the betrayal. Not that people lied, but that truth became a variable in a confidence equation. What's next is straightforward if we stay boring. Loosen filters by rule when independent instruments concur. Publish the signature library that the Autohide already knows by heart. Forecast burst windows so ground rigs can sit in the pocket. Keep the ledger visible. When a checksum changes, the world sees why. Each small fix puts science back where it belongs, out front, with methods that can be questioned and run by strangers. The choice isn't between hype and prudence. It's between discipline in daylight and discipline in the dark. One builds trust even when it finds nothing. The other burns it even when it's right. The mirror archive, the affidavits, the replicated terraces, they've already made the case that process, not speculation, is the story. And if the sky is telling us that discrete occluders are moving where periodic planets shouldn't, then we owe it a posture that doesn't rename structure as housekeeping. Here's the last bridge we have to cross. If construction is underway, the cadence will get louder. That's a test we can pass in public, with fingerprints posted and clocks set, or fail behind a filter tuned to erase its own discovery. The data's saying it softly now. It won't stay soft. The failure wasn't seeing terraces, it was sanding them smooth and calling that stewardship. Official context came first. An ex-NASA confession explained the mismatch. If we treat truth like a stability risk, we'll miss the very signatures that could teach us who else builds in this galaxy. Subscribe if you want daylight to win over posture. This channel will track the windows, publish fingerprints, and push for public clocks on suppression. Drop a comment, dust obligations or engineered occluders, what carries for you, and show your chain. Then watch the follow-up on Autohide tactics and the Saturn file link.